I wanted to kick it off, first of all, by introducing our panelists, and I want to encourage you throughout. We'll do it as questions lobbed to them periodically, and for each question I'll leave time for your questions so that we don't forget about you and have a one-way conversation. So please do feel free to chime in when you need to get things clarified. But I want to introduce, first of all, the panel that we've got here. Rich Murphy is on the far right there, my far right, and he is a senior web producer for WTTG Fox 5 in Washington. Next to him is Ross Herosian, and Ross is manager of college programs at SiriusXM Radio. Kathie Gartrell is with National Geographic Traveler, where she's managing editor of e-publishing. And then finally, Adam Marton is with the Baltimore Sun, where he's a production technology manager. I wanted to just quickly run through what I found early this morning, looking through journalism jobs and what criteria were listed for positions that our students might be heading into. There were a lot of the descriptions for traditional skill sets that we're all familiar with. Some of them said they want people with news gathering chops, zest for stories, detail-oriented, with communication skills, oral and written, strong copy editing, strong AP style. But there were a lot of other terms mingled in with that. Familiarity with multimedia creation tools, video editing, on top of social media, able to create visualizations to go with stories, able to lead large data gathering projects, collaborate with engineers, designers, and researchers, proficient in InDesign, photography, WordPress, strong teamwork skills, interpersonal skills. And for the web developers, lots of acronyms were thrown in: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, XML, jQuery, SQL. So what I want to know from these guys is, what are you looking for when you hire our students, either for internships or jobs? How many of these descriptors that we found in the ads are what you're actually needing for the positions you have? And Rich, I'll start with you.
What we look for at Fox 5 is essentially a broad background. What I like to see, what I'm amazed when our interns come to the station is how many don't take advantage of all the different things that we have to offer, especially from the web. I tell every one of them, they come around on their little tour with our intern coordinator, I said, you really need to spend some time with us if you want to get a job. You really need to learn how to do this. And if of the 15 interns we get a semester, probably like 2 or 3 take me up on it. And most of them spend their time in the back of the newsroom, and they're all about creating reporter packages and going out with field crews. And I understand that. I was a photojournalist for 17 years, and that's where the excitement is, that's where the recognition is. But especially in the economy right now, they need to know how to do everything. They need to know how to shoot. They need to know how to edit nonlinear video. They need to know how to produce for the web. They need to know how to create slideshows. And they just have to have these basic automatic backgrounds. And what I try to do is, back in our news director's office, is our boxes and boxes of essentially the competition, the people that are trying to get jobs. And everything to me is like, what's going to separate you from your peers? What's going to make your DVD jump out of that box to actually get him to even look at it, much less consider you for an open position?
Okay, Ross?
I think speaking kind of from a recruiter standpoint, oftentimes I think they tend to, any job description you try and throw in as many things as you'd like to have in there. There are elements certainly that probably parts of that you could get by with some of the jobs, but I think you also recruit to try and start to build people in your organization that have familiarity with these tools. There is a big gap still, inside of companies, of people who are comfortable with social media, new web tools, and the people who have the quote-unquote old-style journalism skills. And I think there's a lot of trying to bridge that gap of students coming out of school ideally having those skills of comfort and familiarity with web coding and blogging and video editing and all of those things. But a lot of the jobs that still exist are based off of even core requirements, such as being able to cut audio, being able to actually write in a way, not only for instance, for our company, not only for something like the web, but also for broadcast, whether it's actually video or radio. Those are kind of core skills that a lot of people kind of skip over in lieu of the more flashy kind of web skills. And I think a lot can go from a good foundation of being able to actually, the core journalistic skills and building on top of that with all of the, like I said, flashy web pieces.
Kathie?
I would definitely agree with that, with the core skills. We look for people who can write well, who are well read, who know something about the world. You need to know a little bit about geography, a little bit about the world, what's going on. Know something about our magazine. Everybody knows National Geographic. Do you know National Geographic Traveler? Look at our website. All these things. Know how to think creatively. A lot of times with our interns, they end up doing a lot of research and they have to know how to find good sources to confirm things. So overall, we just need to have people who are really interested in the world and who can think creatively and who have the good basic skills and good resumes, no typos.
Adam?
Well, ultimately, I would just want to echo what the other panelists have said, that in the Baltimore Sun newsroom, what we want more than anything else is people with a solid foundation in journalism. We want good writers who have real familiarity with AP style. We want people who are already doing what they want to do for us. If you want to shoot video for us, show us your video. If you want to be a reporter or a journalist, show us your clips from your college newspaper. Show us the clips that you've written for Patch or for hyperlocal publications. There's no excuse in the current self-publishing new media environment for people that want to be doing this not to just be doing it. As far as technical skills, that's really, there's so many newsroom positions, and some newsroom positions absolutely require really serious technical skills and others don't. In general, basic HTML, basic Photoshop, understanding of how to manipulate data, understanding of how to shoot and edit video, these are the things that are going to get you hired. These are the things that are going to make your resume stand out and are going to make us choose you over ultimately somebody else.
So I'm wondering, with this list of skills that you're all talking about, how well are students able to jump in, and what are they doing when you first bring them in, either as a new hire or as a new intern? What are they likely to do for you in their roles?
All right, so if somebody was going to be a web producer for us, we're a union shop, so you can't touch the equipment.
all the music and talk and entertainment content and things like that, they have varying sides. So if someone comes to us and says, I'm interested in entertainment journalism, we can have a home for them versus, oh, I'm interested in news. Then we have an opportunity for them also with all the different and diverse content we have. We train all of them, and we recruit in a way that, since we have a lot of opportunity, we can recruit in a way that we can bring in people that have a lot of experience, but also people that don't have any experience and they have a particular passion. And, I always tell them that in a lot of ways, media and radio is built upon passion. And, it's a real catalyst for success because we can train you on the rest, especially at a student level. We will train you on the rest, but show us that you're passionate about something, some element of our business, or some particular topic, or, we have tons of opportunity in that way. And I think the tricky thing that I hear a lot is that students, they may come in and they say, oh, I'm interested in going on air or being on TV or being on the radio. And I think it's one of those things that's always helpful to echo, especially from people that have been in the industry and even for educators, is that there's a lot that goes on between being a student and going in front of a camera or behind a microphone. And I think, it can be a generation that's so used to, people being a flash sensation on YouTube and then becoming a star. Or it's like, oh, well, I've been doing videos and I got a YouTube channel. Like, why can't I'm ready. And I thought the same thing as an intern. Like, I was like, I'm ready to go. And then I sat down with my mentor and he completely tore me apart. And it was the best day of my career. It's like, oh, I am not ready. I'm not ready at all. And I think it's important for us as a company that brings in interns, but also for Edge, to say there's a lot that goes on between being an intern or being a student and actually the craft that is a broadcaster. And I think a lot of times that's missed. That craft of, it's like, well, why do I have to edit audio? Or why do I have to, I'm just going to go on air. It's like, well, there are very few and far few positions now in media that you're just doing one thing. It's almost non-existent. Media becomes consolidated, roles becomes consolidated. Oftentimes, if you're going to be a news person, you go out, you set up your own camera, you do your own stand-up, you pack it up, you go into the studio, you edit your package, and you get it to the producer, you get it delivered to the web, you upload it, you code it. That could be one person. And so to prepare a student, I think, just for one particular aspect of that, or for them to be having just one particular aspect of expertise there, is a real shortcoming for them when they come out of school. We deal with a lot of students that are like, oh, I'm interested in radio. And I look at a resume and I'm like, does your college have a radio station? Yeah. Well, why aren't you involved in that? No one listens to it. It's like, it's not about who listens to it. It's about experience. It's about repetitions. And I hear that a lot. Or they're coming out and they're like a production major. And I'm like, have you used Final Cut or Pro Tools or even Audacity, which is a completely open source free platform? And they're like, no, not really. We haven't had to do anything like that for class. And that shocks me at times. Like, how can you be a production major and never have touched these tools? Like, you're not, and even all of them now probably walking around with iPads and Macs, they have GarageBand. Even that you can do stuff with and get familiar with that process of production. So I think that's just really important, for both sides to understand, is that, that's something we see. And I don't think it's always because these interns aren't motivated. I think it's because they don't know. They don't know what's all required. So I can't chalk it up and be like, they're all just lazy and they're not doing it. I think it's because they don't understand that these are the tools of the trade.
Kathie, what do you see when students walk in the door as interns? What are you going to throw at them?
Well, since our staff has downsized over the last several years, as I think is the case with a lot of companies, we depend a lot more on interns than we used to. And we have interns for specific positions. For instance, we'll have one intern who's an EPUB web intern. We usually have about 2 editorial research interns, 1 business editorial intern, a photo intern, and a marketing intern. So even though they have specific roles, we have like an intern breakfast. We have different things to try to get them involved in what goes on throughout the whole magazine. They come to our staff meetings, and they're basically treated like staff. I mean, when they come in, we train them. For my intern, the web and EPUB intern, I train them on our CMS, which is rather complicated, and then kind of let them go on that. They help with tagging our print issue for XML documents to go in our iPad and Kindle and all those issues. The research interns are responsible for, I would say, maybe close to a third or even half of the fact-checking for the magazine. So we train them extensively and really depend on them, and our researchers who are on staff then sort of check their work. But and as the others have said, you sort of see from the first week or so how good they're going to be, and the better they are, the more you trust them and the more you give them to do. If I have a web intern who I know is good at writing headlines and can do keywords and all that stuff, I'll let her just go to town with that. Otherwise, it's spending a lot of time going behind them and making sure that they're doing it right, and sometimes you just don't give them that much to do. So, but overall, like I said, we really do depend on our interns. We look for really good ones, and we're thrilled when we get people who meet our expectations.
And Adam, what are they likely to do at the Sun?
Well, we have a number of different types of newsroom internships. We have news interns and features interns and video interns, photography interns, and I've actually just started a new digital newsroom internship. So they'll do lots of things. I mean, oftentimes we have interns managing our social media content and doing events listings and photo galleries and all kinds of work. But now more than ever before, there's lots of opportunities for interns to do real work in the newsroom, especially news interns. Our two newsroom are the news interns over the summer had over 50 combined bylines in the newspaper and online, and those include page one stories. So we really, like everyone else has said, the first couple of weeks are key in assessing what somebody is capable of. So news interns we'll start out sending them on simple assignments, assigning them to briefs, and if they show that they're self-starters and they can get out there and get the story and are competent writers, we're quickly going to move them up and start sending them to cover stories by themselves, simply because we don't have the resources ourselves. The newsroom is much smaller now than it was 10 years ago, so it gives the opportunity for interns to do a tremendous amount more, and that includes pitching stories, which is something that you never would have seen 10 years ago.
There's a question.
No, we do not. We have, our internships are only for college credit. We do not pay our interns.
Do any of you pay your interns up here?
No.
I'm a big proponent of internships and the value of that, but do you not feel that, two of you admitted our staffs are down, so we use interns to do our work?
If
I think that's a problem. I mean, in terms of our students valuing their work that they do, and
The experience that kids get for the 3 credits in our newsroom far outweighs the experience or education that they would get in a classroom in that same time. So that would be,
Yeah, and if I could speak to that too, I think if I weren't, because someone the other day asked me the same question, and I said, if I weren't so close to our program and know exactly the experience and operate as the checks and balances and be familiar with the FLSA guidelines and be familiar with what an internship is supposed to be, that this is not about getting coffee, this is not about making copies, that is not what our experience is. And that's something that I have even vehemently have everyday battles with when people say, oh, just have an intern do it. I said, no, that is not what you're having an intern do. These are battles that a lot of people don't. In fairness, I can't speak for what battles other companies have in relations to their internship program. But for us, I can tell you that ours is something that is extremely hands-on. It's also something where I think there's a balance there, because we have opportunities to take risks on students through an internship. And the turning everything, but people don't understand, you switch everything. Let's say we were to pay all the interns. You will be surprised at how quickly their roles and responsibilities will then shift, because companies will say, if I'm paying you, guess what? You're filing. I don't care. And with us, with an unpaid aspect to the internship, it provides and it tells our mentors, listen, this is an unpaid experience. The experience that you have to take time to be a mentor, not a boss. You take time to actually cultivate this talent. You take time to sit down with them every week. This is a different experience. If you convert something to a pay, you can see a big shift as far as the roles go. And a lot of people don't consider that.
I'm going to disagree with that because, I mean, I teach primarily in the broadcast area where very, very few internships are paid. There is a significant difference at places where interns are paid in terms of the attention that is paid to them, the things that they get to do. I mean, they're much less likely
Real.
to be stuck with getting coffee and filing.
Again, I can only speak to our experience, and I can tell you from over the 5 years I've been doing this, the hundreds and hundreds of interns we bring in, they oftentimes are coming to me and saying, I've done paid internships, and this one takes the care. So I can only speak, again, to my own experience. However, I also can't disagree with you that the unpaid experiences, they can run into the risk of just being this. I can see why from an academics, from a school perspective, it's like, well, I'm a little nervous about issuing credits because I don't know if this experience is worth those credits. I see that side of the argument also.
Can I just say, let me just say one thing. I see all your questions. If we're talking real world here, I don't think Ross would have started in the Washington, D.C. market, and I know I wouldn't have started in Tampa, Florida, if I didn't do the internship. So if you're talking about the better chance of getting a job and not having to start in market 152, whatever, and work your way up, I think the internship more than pays off, because you are so far ahead of your competition to get a job when you have an internship than if you don't. I don't know where you want to start. You call. I know
Yeah,
this gentleman in the
let's
blue shirt
do-
had his arm up.
And this is a really good, but I don't want the whole session to turn in whether it should be paid or unpaid. So maybe 2 more comments on that point, and then we'll move on to some other points.
The gentleman in the blue shirt had his.
Yeah.
I agree and disagree in a lot of ways. I teach at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, so we live right next to Merrill Corporation, who pays their interns. And the interns in Merrill Corporation get a better, much richer experience than those students who fly out to New York for the summer and usually end up in the fashion closet. We have one student who spent 14 hours looking for a headband. That's not a good internship experience.
Yeah,
And so I do,
absolutely.
and I am very frustrated by the free internship because you guys you're giving credit, and that's great. But really what you're doing is you're asking students not only to come fly out and live in your area and pay to live there, you're asking them to pay for the experience to come out there and live there too. Because you're not really giving them credit, they're still paying for that
They're
credit.
paying for the credit, and
And
we're
so-
giving them credit.
And so I think that's, when my students go out to New York, realistically, it costs them up to $8,000 for that 3 credits to come back to our school. And sometimes, again, I don't know your experiences, and I'm just venting through them all, bear with me. But I think that, I agree. Experience is unbelievable, and it's very helpful, and it got me to where I was going. It gave me my first job. But can't we agree as a whole group that internships is free internships? They're kind of a scam.
I think we would probably agree with you. It's our bosses and the people above that control the paychecks.
Well, I think that, you're right that your institution is giving the credit, but certainly we have taken great pains at the Sun to make sure that we're providing great value through free internship programs. It's not a matter of having students. It's not a matter of having students come in and sending them out on the street and immediately having them start file stories or, create photo galleries, because that's what we need to have done at that moment. We have a really structured training program where half the time is spent training and teaching people skills, and the other half the time is spent with them out on the street learning how to utilize those skills in a real world environment. And that's really important.
All right, I'm
agree,
just going to take one more hand on this point.
Yeah, I can speak to both sides of this issue because I was the internship director for a communication program, and I have to say that it improves the institution department to structure the program so that the students get the most benefit out of it. This is a 6-credit required internship program. I had to vet each internship. They had 2 sets of contracts that you had to sign with the internship supervisor. I had to be in communication with the supervisor on site and do 2 site visits. The students had a seminar once a week where we would all get together. They had assignments related to internships and job search in general. It was the best internship program. I had students who I thought would never get to first base that got jobs out of that internship. It was not paid. It was very well structured. I worked at other schools where they said, hey, you want an internship? See you later. Send you out the door. That's a horrible internship. I vetted them. I knew what were the good internships and I directed them. So I think one thing I find in institutions is that there actually are still journalism programs and communication programs that do not even value internships. You don't even require them. That's like so
Yeah.
backwards.
I think that's a travesty.
And I,
And
think so. I don't care.
It-
Going on page, to me, that's a really
and I do want to piggyback because I'm the internship director at Maryland, and I see both paid and unpaid interns come through the door. And if they're going to get credit, we have a lot of things the students have, a lot of hoops the students have to jump through, and a lot of hoops for this. All these supervisors here who all work with our students fill out big evaluation forms that look like they came from their teacher.
and-
honestly, they're massive reports on how well they've done. So I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's
I know we
advocate
want to. I know
on
we want
that.
to move on real quick, but I've been on both sides. When I was in school for radio, both my internships were unpaid, but they were drastically different. One of them, I was that kid looking for a headband for 14 hours, shooting T-shirts out of cannons at promotions, doing a ticket giveaway for NSYNC. It was. I still have nightmares from it. I can hear the voices in my head still. And I can tell you that it was from that experience for me in building our program that I wanted it to be different. And that we are required, a lot of schools send us midterm evaluations. We do them anyways. We do them ourselves. We do resume workshops. We have them meet with our executives. We do career planning. We do training. We do all of these things, that oftentimes I have so many students that do come to me and say, this bridged the gap. That's what internships do. And I think it is a travesty to not take that kind of and build it into some sort of curriculum, because it bridges a gap between, hey, I've cut some audio in school and put together a package, to, wow, okay, this is the newsroom. This is the nature of it. This is how, and it bridges that gap between that foundational piece that we were discussing earlier and the actual application. And there is a big gap there. As hard as schools work to make sure that all the curriculum, everything is at the pace with the market or whatever it may be, corporations and companies are even more behooved to do that. Because if we don't, guess what? We're out of business. That's a big challenge for us. And so I just wanted to I don't
All
know.
right,
I'm sure you
Amy?
want to move on. Yeah,
All right.
great. Yeah.
Feels different. This
Yeah.
young lady right
Things
here.
that
That's you.
is fun for us is that students are really challenged to try new things and experiment in the classroom. Do they have the opportunity in the newsrooms to try new things? Or, what would you say that they need to do to get leadership's attention so they can be heard on that?
All right. So my very first news director told me, Murphy, the thing that separates the people that succeed and don't is like this much. So if I were to use that as a sports analogy, I would call it coming through in the clutch. You never know when an opportunity is going to show up in a newsroom where it's breaking news or whatever, and somebody says, I need you to do this, or get me somebody on the phone who can do a talk back about Gaddafi being killed or something like that. And so if they have the background and they've prepared themselves to know how to figure out stuff like that, then those are the things that get noticed.
What I'm really talking about is them bringing something new to the game that might not be the traditional way of covering something. How much opportunity do they have to say, can we try it this way?
Adam?
I could say at the newspaper, we're looking for new ideas, and we are very, very open to that. And we don't have a lot of interns. We have an intern or two in each of the 4 or 5 categories that I named earlier each semester, and sometimes only one and sometimes none. And we are very open to that. In fact, I'm looking for an intern in my new digital program to come up with a way that we can effectively use Tumblr at the newspaper. And I would be extremely open to people coming with new ideas. And in fact, that's the kind of thing that would set aside a so-so intern from an intern that we hired.
And talk a bit, Adam, because before the session you were talking about areas that you don't see enough students, that you have openings and you can't fill them.
Sure.
What aren't we doing to get them to you?
Sure. So I'm an interactive graphic designer, and I work on a team that does data visualizations and creates interactive news graphics, and we build and maintain the website and the blogs. And so I can't find people to hire for my team. I also can't find interns who are qualified to come do my internship. And again, I don't ask people to move to Baltimore to be an intern. If they want to do that, that's great. But I recruit out of local colleges. I'm a Towson professor, and I'd love to recruit out of University of Maryland. So I just don't see that colleges are teaching graphics to journalism students enough, and aren't teaching what is, probably the worst quote I've heard in the last month is, "Data is the new video." I mean, that's a really stupid thing to say. But in a lot of ways, it's true. It's the new hot thing that people are looking for, that people are clicking on. I hope everybody's going to go to the quantitative journalism session this afternoon at 2 o'clock, because that's the future. And I need people. I need you guys to send me people. I have an internship open. I'm going to have open union jobs that I can't fill because journalism schools aren't teaching people how to do graphics and how to visualize data in really effective ways that use news judgment and tell intriguing stories.
Say the,
What other holes
say the one
are
thing
there?
We were talking about how all those tools are available. They're out there.
Oh,
Look.
sure. Right. And it's not a matter of using Flash. God forbid, don't use Flash. Go. Right. There's a lot of open source tools. The open source movement is filled with tools, especially things Google's putting out. I would point people to Google Maps Open API, and especially a wonderful new program called Google Fusion Tables that allows for really rapid development of data visualizations.
It's all free.
All free.
Other holes that you're seeing, and then I'm going to allow us to push back, because so what aren't we doing in academe, and what aren't you doing once you get them to train them? I want to hear what more you could do too. But so what else aren't we doing that you would like to see?
I think just overall, somehow there needs to be a basic curiosity about the world and a way to observe the world that isn't. It's not a broad base of knowledge. I don't know if it's because everybody is right here with their iPod all day and their iPad, and I see a lot of people out here are doing it too, and I hope it's just because you're taking notes because what we're saying is so valuable. But maybe you're really on Words with Friends. I don't know. But I find that, and I worry about it with my own kids who watch TV with the laptop on their lap and looking at this at the same time, texting their friends. And to me, I saw a great story on 60 Minutes like 5-7 years ago about a Harvard professor who just went walking with Steve Croft and just pointed out the observations of the world. I have like a photo gallery on my Facebook I call Observations of the World. That basically I just take pictures and put them up. And I think there needs to be a basic curiosity about that stuff and finding out things. And I would venture to say, like, if you paid attention, if you drove here, you probably drove by 3 or 4 or 5 stories. Every story has 5 different angles to it. When I was hired by my news director up here in Washington, she had a quiz that she put everybody through, and she put out a scenario, bad accident at an intersection because a group of teenagers stole a stop sign. And it was up to me to come up with story angles. Okay, that's the story. Give me some angles. So I came up with 12. The record was like 17. But I would venture, like, even use that as an assignment in your class. Come up with some make-believe story and say, okay, it's your job to produce a whole section of the newspaper. It's your job to create a block in a newscast. Give me the angles. What are the angles? What are the things that are of interest to you or that our viewers need to know? A lot of things they think they need to know is sometimes they don't realize that they're consumers and they're always here and they're always on their laptop and they're always watching, but somebody's out there creating it. And there's a process to that creation. There's a basic story structure, beginning, middle, and end. genuine moments, find the surprise. What are the things that are going to make it memorable? And they need to know how to create that and capture that and be able to produce that. Because all the great stories, all the great movies, somebody had to figure out the technique to actually produce that.
Yeah, that's great. That was inspiring even to me. Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. I recently, I want to piggyback on that. I mean, I recently took up photography, and I thought it'd be so simple. I just got a camera. You invest all this hundreds of dollars in a camera, and you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna go out and take some pictures. It'd be great. And my sister's a professional photographer, and I was always kind of like, yeah, that's what she does. And I got it, and I was like, this is hard. Like, it's really hard. I was so used to being a consumer, as he said, like everything's just sent to me, and like I was an audio and video, and like I could just do it real quick. But there's a patience that was involved with photography that I learned, and I think from that I also learned framing a story. A good photograph is more than just a picture. It's a story, and I think in that way. Now everyone is so used to everything's so customized. Everything is so like I have hundreds of RSS feeds that I look at every single day, but there's sites I want, there's sites that I've said I want to get content from here. I want to get content from here, and you go on and everything is advertising even is personalized. Everything we're living in this personalization, and I think it's very easy to get in this bubble of. I have a good depth of knowledge, but not necessarily breadth. And I'm also intrigued because I've been reading this book called The Shallows, and it's actually about how all of this connectivity and all this information is actually transforming or can transform our brain and how we process information. It's kind of scary because what it's creating is, again, a lot of breadth. You can Google something and be an expert and look at a Wikipedia page and be an expert really quick. But do you really dig deep into it? And I think that, again, just jumping on there, I think that's something, jarring students out of their comfort level. I mean, if any place, I think academia is the place that can help do that because they have to sign, I got to do this English literature class, but I want to be in TV. I don't know what it means to me. That kind of thing, or whatever, even classes inside of majors that they're like, I don't see how this connects. They may only realize that at the end, or they may reflect back and realize it. Like for me, some of my best classes now looking back were history classes. I mean, I never would have thought that would have been the case. I'm like, I want to be on the radio and talk about music. What do I care about history? But it's helped given this kind of, this view, this wider world view.
Kathie? Do you want to flip it, and maybe you and Adam could tell us, is there training that you give them once they get there to help them develop as new hires?
Mm-hmm. We have a program at National Geographic for all of our employees, including our interns, that the library puts on called Total Research. And they can get a certificate, and basically they learn all sorts of research techniques. So it's web research, finding experts in environmental science, in just all sorts of different genres, and it's one way for them to have something for their resume, but also it gives them a really good background on how to become how to find experts in different areas. We also have our library does a whole bunch of different things, and they'll have speakers come in periodically to do reports on trend research, which is always really helpful. And then I think I mentioned we have in Traveler, we do intern breakfasts where the staff is all there and the interns can ask any questions that they want. And everybody at the Geographic is pretty open to interns, so if someone is interested in photography and wants to talk to one of the photo editors at National Geographic magazine, they can do that. If they want to meet with the human resources vice president to find out about more jobs, they can do that. So basically, as we've said before, if the students will take initiative from people and to learn whatever they're interested in.
Adam?
We have our training programs really break down into three basic areas. We have just newsroom training that happens all the time that we involve the interns in, and that oftentimes involves, just about SEO and keywords and writing headlines for the web, and pardon me, just general new technology training that all journalists need, and certainly the interns are a part of that. We also have, all the interns have to be trained on specific newsroom systems like our CMS, and we teach them all about metrics. We use a great system called Omniture, and any of you guys that work in websites know the importance of metrics and numbers, and people don't realize that before they start. How we're looking year over year at every single day, week, hour, trying to assess performance and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work, and moving things around to help turn the meter to meet specific goals. So it's really important to give students an insight into that. And then, of course, there's the specific training that they get within their individual desks. So when they come to me, I'm going to be teaching them about different coding and graphics programs and how to make infographics. When they go to video, they're going to be taught how to shoot and edit video. And then when they go, when they're news interns, they're going to be taught how to report stories and go out and get in people's faces and get quotes and really report the story in multiple mediums. One thing that I would like to mention is that we have a really great structure of sort of informal mentorships at the Sun, where it's really easy, it's possible for interns to really make personal connections with our reporters and sort of be taken under the wing of young reporters. We have a really young newsroom because we just do. We have a young newsroom. And we have a really, really great collection of young female reporters at the Baltimore Sun, and that's part of a long line of female reporters that have been taking on interns under their wing and really teaching them to be strong journalists and then hiring them at the Sun. Internships programs that are really two of our rock stars in the newsroom. Justin Fenton, many of you may know him, is a crime reporter for the Sun, and Justin Fenton is a perfect example of someone who's taken really strong traditional foundation in journalism and applied it to modern technology. So Justin Fenton's Twitter feed is probably the best source of breaking news in all of Baltimore City. Justin is one of these guys that goes to sleep with a police scanner next to him at night. When and I'm not kidding, I come in and we're in the 9:30 news meeting and we'll see Justin come in jeans and a hat, and we're like, wow, he didn't even get dressed for work this morning. And then you see him posting to his blog that he's been at a crime scene since 3 in the morning. So it's really fascinating to watch Justin's process as he hears something happen on the police scanner, gets to the scene before anybody else, immediately starts interviewing eyewitnesses and police and tweeting verified details immediately. Then he comes back to the office and he and Peter Herman blog on Baltimore Crime Blog about the story. And then you can, within hours, we've got full stories posted on the web, and the next day, a nice print centerpiece around the story. So it's really fascinating line to watch and really easy to watch. And Justin pushes some lines. He really does. But he is a leader in figuring out how you can apply journalism to Twitter. And he's doing it better than anybody else, in my opinion. I would just like to mention, if there was an incident last year at Johns Hopkins where there was a shooting, and Justin heard about it on his police scanner. He was the first person on the scene. He started interviewing eyewitnesses and police. He got inside the hospital, and by the end of the day, when that story became a story of national interest, he was the media expert on that story. His Twitter feed was shown on CNN. He was interviewed by multiple national media outlets, and really, was able to sort of propel himself to sort of some local fame just based on that one story and his use of social media.
And to clarify, was he an intern then, or was he a hire at that point?
He was a hire at that point.
Okay. And Diana, you had a question in the back?
I just wanted to make a comment on that. My experience, Justin was one of my students.
Great.
By the way, when he was in my class, wasn't even sure he wanted to be here. Something that I think we as academics can do, I had sent and did a recommendation to one of my editing students to go to the Sun. And they liked this. And so the intern coordinator, whoever was hiring, got back to me and said, do you have any other good students? So I took the time to find another good student, encourage him to apply. So now we've got 2 students there. So take seriously when they say, do you have any good students? I mean, I could have blown it off, but instead I contacted a kid who wasn't sure if he was going to do it, and now he's interning at the Sun. So there's a lot you can do to build relationships. You can take the time to find good students, encourage them to get them there, because then they'll keep coming back.
That's a great point. question?
I have a question about the numbers and how competitive these positions are. I'm assuming that you get a lot of applications for both your internships
Sure.
and of course, permanent jobs. Can you talk a little about the numbers? Because I try and use those numbers to impress on the students how seriously they need to take this process and how competitive it will be when they're looking for jobs.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Surprisingly, I don't get that many applications. And especially for spring and fall, sometimes I'm actually calling local colleges to try to get interns. So I would say the summer is when you get the most applications by far. But if they're really interested in, want to get a good chance of getting an internship, the spring and fall are better.
How many do you get in the summer?
In the summer, I probably get about 20, which isn't a whole lot. Now,
Is that for one job or how many?
That's for one job. That's for the EPUB web position. Now, on the other hand, we have 2 paid positions that are year-long. They're called research apprentices, and they're for recent graduates. So when we just published the job posting for that about a week ago, and we had 189 in 2 days. So that's kind of the...
Yeah.
So real quick numbers from each of you?
Well, I would say it used to be resumes came in VHS tapes, and so the boxes went this high. Now they're on DVDs that are about this small, but the boxes are still like this high.
So we do pretty comprehensive reports after each session, even on an annualized basis. So on a low side, so fall is typically our hardest session to recruit for. We have at least 5 times the candidates of positions. So we're actually talking, 500 to 600. On the high side, we usually get 6 to 10 times as many applicants as we have positions. Now, that data has to be also considered that they're not all high quality candidates. We get people, it's a challenge for us in that people are familiar with our brand, but not necessarily our business. So we get a lot of students that, know SiriusXM because their parents have it, and I can't tell you how many call screenings I do. It's like, well, tell me what you know about SiriusXM. My parents have it. It's like, what does that even mean? So, it's like your radio and it's satellite. Like, you got that from the logo. You're cheating. We're on the internet. For goodness, I don't understand students that don't do research on companies. It's called Google. I mean, you type in any Sirius or XM or Sirius and XM, you're going to get the website. So I'm just completely baffled by that. And we've looked at the actual source data. So the largest source for us, we're always out there trying to do the sourcing. I mean, recruiting is dealing with them once we got them, but we still work very hard in the sourcing piece. And about 40% come from college career centers that we work with. About 20 to 30% come from the social media efforts that we do. And the rest is kind of a mix of a whole bunch of different things.
Adam, your numbers?
I don't have exact numbers. It's in the dozens, but if you shoot me an email, I will get them for you. Okay.
I think sometimes they apply to specific departments at the
Exactly.
Sun, so they don't all go through one person.
Real quick, I think on that note too, as was mentioned earlier, I mean, if anyone knows of an all-star student, I don't know any company that's going to essentially turn down a recommendation from someone who's worked with a student. I mean, that goes so far with me. I mean, it goes really far. If I get, and I stress all the career students, like, hey, if you know someone, send them to me directly, and I'll talk with them. Like, we'll work through that. So that's something that's helpful, I think, to any employer, is to get these people who you are recognizing as these are great students.
We're allowed to go a little bit late because we started 10 minutes late because everything ran late this morning.
I know she's had a question.
And I know you have one question. We'll take yours. And what I want to know, and we're going to get to you for an end here, is how do we plan for the future as teachers? What should we be doing for 5 years out, 10 years out? What do you see? But let's get to your question first.
I was just going to say, it kind of went all the way back to the beginning of the discussion. For the students who are stuck in the internships where we're doing the bitch work, how do we get out of that? How do we ask for more? I mean, because all these internships sound great, but I feel like that's the exception and not the rule.
Sure,
And
sure.
if we're stuck getting coffee and there's nothing wrong with fact checking, but if we're just fact checking for the 5 hours we're there constantly, what do we do to, even if we are asking them, when they're like, oh, but fact checking is important, how do we get more out of that?
I would say come up with an idea that I can't turn down. Say, hey, I've been thinking about this, and even better, have done your legwork and a little bit to show me. Like, come up with, if you have an idea that's better than the bitch work they're making you do, then say, hey, I want to do this, and look, here's what I've already done, and impress somebody.
And you might have
And-
to do it on your own time too, and not theirs, right? So, does anybody else? I know I want to know how do I figure out my syllabus to be looking forward instead of static, and what do you need 5 years out?
Well, if we knew that, we'd all be really rich. but I will tell you that I think everyone, including within our own broadcast newsroom, because, I mean, that's what we know is broadcast, but everybody needs to think about the delivery systems. And everything I've read tells me that mobile and tablets are gonna surpass the desktop as far as incorporation into people's lives. So I would think about the different ways to produce on different platforms and at different times. Like, appointment news is gone as far as I'm concerned. I mean, hardly anybody's home at 5 o'clock to watch the news anyway. And by the time 5 o'clock comes around, most people have already gotten it all right here. So I would say, think about how people are consuming it and figure out how to produce it for where they're consuming it. Like, our promotion department was all excited they were going to push the web during our afternoon judge shows. And I said, well, I would never turn down promotion, but when something breaks, it's on our Facebook and Twitter within like 5 minutes. And the 35,000 plus people that follow us on Facebook have already gotten it here, have already shared it for us. And I would venture to say that promotion has been more effective than anything that's going to run 30 seconds during our afternoon block for people that are already watching us. I don't know if that helped or not.
Yep. Ross?
I think we've touched on a couple different times, at least I know I have. I still think there's value in the foundations. I mean, I've been talking with almost every career center, or talking with almost every colleague of mine. The one thing that is still a very common complaint, I guess you will, is that we get writing from students. It's just abysmal. And I think in any journalistic capacity, it starts with, you can be as creative and you can have the best vision and you can have the best idea in the world and the best angle. But it's how you convey that. And it has to be done efficiently and effectively. And I think a lot of that is students miss the mark because they can't communicate it in an effective way through writing. And then you look at it as was discussed, different delivery methods. You write differently for a broadcaster than you do for the web, and you write differently even how you essentially sell a lead on Twitter. I mean, you look at Twitter as essentially an ongoing, refreshing list of headlines, right? So using that 140 characters you have wisely and in a way that it will pull people in, and I think also just you yourself, anyone that is getting involved in what those services are and constantly, having a hunger for learning more about it. Like, the littlest thing, little research pieces and things like that can really make or break how someone uses a Facebook page or a Twitter page or things like that, because those aren't going to go away. That kind of platform. I mean, Facebook, the next new service may come along that's better than Facebook, but the concept of that, how you are, instead of what it used to be one-to-many, it's kind of a one-to-many and the many distributed among their own friends and people and influence. So kind of just being cognizant of that, but I can't stress enough, it all starts with foundational pieces and then building from there.
Kathie, prepping for the future?
I just can't agree enough about the core skills, because you got to be able to write well, you got to be able to express yourself well. But also I feel like that with sort of the uncertainty of journalism in the future, it's really helpful to encourage students to become an expert in some area. If you're interested in travel journalism, well, maybe you want to become an expert in Asia, or in family travel, or traveling alone, food travel. We're finding more and more that when we go to writers, we have kind of a stable of writers that we use a lot, but we do try new writers. But oftentimes, instead of just saying, oh, here's somebody who sent in some clips that look good, it'll be, oh, well, this person, traveled around the world by themselves. I bet you they can give a good perspective on this story that we want to do. So I think that really helps in making them more marketable and more desirable, just in general.
And Adam, is Flash dead?
Oh, gosh. Thought we were going to skip that one. No, I mean, it's interesting that the reasons that we didn't like to use Flash 10 years ago are really just as prevalent, if not more, today than they were back then, right? It's heavy. It requires a plug-in. Now, instead of dealing with the plug-in and people trying to connect on their laptop, we've got the problem that Flash isn't loading on iPhones and iPads and just generally isn't being supported. And we've got all these other clearly there's lots of great technologies coming to hasten the death of Flash, more than Steve Jobs and Adobe. We've got, HTML5, but there's problems with that. Like we heard yesterday, HTML5 is not going to be ready until 2014, and it's not browser compliant right now. We've got all these great Google tools that are helping to hasten the death of Flash. But ultimately, we're living in the here and now, right? So what are people doing now? People are using Flash. I mean, they're not using it as much as they were a couple years ago because we've got all these other great tools. But if you look at the best news organizations in the world, you can see the New York Times is still using Flash to do interactive graphics, not as much as they were, but they're still using it. The Washington Post is still using Flash to create beautiful interactive graphics, really, really interactive graphics. A colleague of mine, Kat Downs, used to work at The Sun, now works at The Post, and is a great Flash designer, integrates a technology called Flex that will allow you to bring in databases into your Flash designs to create really, really rich data visualizations using Flash. So Flash isn't dead, but in my opinion, it will be before long.
But so what else should they learn in addition to Flash?
Okay, so I guess real quick, Lauren is one of my star students at Towson, so I wanted to, about internships like copy editing and fact checking. Is your internship at City Paper, at Baltimore City Paper?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that internship when I was a senior at Towson also. So what happened was one day, nobody else showed up for work, right? And I stayed till midnight fact-checking all the stories and doing all the events listings. So just like, in these news environments, there's always breaking news, there's always something going wrong. Just be ready to jump on that opportunity, to really show that you've got what it takes to sort of put yourself above everybody else. So sorry for that little aside, but okay, so I interviewed a lot of people in the newsroom on Thursday trying to prepare for this panel so I could give you guys real answers from people who are much more seasoned journalists than myself. And the thing that I overwhelmingly heard was that you don't have to teach kids Twitter. You don't have to teach kids Facebook, right? They know how to use that. They're figuring the technology out. What they need you for, they need you to teach them how to apply journalism to these things, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're looking for. Another point I'd like to make is that as news organizations and newsrooms are getting smaller, we're all going to have to remain flexible and learn how to do more and more jobs. It's just a simple fact of life that everybody's going to have to do more. So we're all going to have to expand our skill sets and be ready to do that. And finally, the best thing you can do for your students is teach them how to tell stories in multiple ways, right? So, you tell stories. We used to tell stories in newsprint, right? And then we learned how to tell them online, and then there was mobile, and now we're trying to learn social media and how to do it on the iPad. And man, I can't believe we haven't talked about that because that's going to change our whole industry. So yeah, just be agile, keep up with technology, but focus on core skills and teaching students how to tell stories in intriguing and interesting ways.
And I'm going to let Sandy have the last question, and then we'll be out of here.
Question about ethics. So people do come to you, students do come, they've been on Twitter, they've been on Facebook, they have their own blogs, put up their own pictures of themselves drinking beer or whatever. But does that get conflated when they come to the job, and are they ethically based, do they understand sort of basic journalism ethical principles, or do we have to change how we teach them?
I think that they don't know when they start. We will. John McIntyre gives an ethics course to all of our new hires and interns. That's really, really fun and sort of engaging. And of course, newsroom employees have to sign an ethics policy about limiting what they'll say and do. I mean, journalists are limited on social media just like they are in their personal lives with what they can express. So yeah, that does need to be addressed. Definitely, of course. Yes.
All right, thank you so much to the panel. Thank you.